a secret. I mean, if a scene is well written, it's pretty clear what's going on. The playwright is not out to trick us. He's out to make it as clear as possible.
Yeah. And Aaron Sorkin, wasn't it fun to hear that?
Oh, well, that guy can write.
That guy can write.
He could do it professionally.
Yeah, he could.
So this scene sounds like it was a lot of fun to do.
That whole series was fun to do.
It was fantastic. It was so great to have Bill come on. And we got to make out and get paid for it.
I always think that when you start out doing David Mamet plays, as you both did, that in some ways it's got to be all downhill from there. I mean, how many people write dialogue on that level? Have you ever felt, either of you, in roles where, like it was a good part, you should be doing it, but it just wasn't kind of reaching that level that you wanted?
I think various scripts bring various things to the table. David can certainly write dialogue as well or better than anybody else, but sometimes there's a great story to be told, or sometimes it's a great character to play, or sometimes the dynamic with all the characters. There's different elements to the party each time. It doesn't have to be Mamet dialogue each time.
Mm-hmm.
Also, Mamet dialogue is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it's fun to speak, but it's impossible to learn and very complicated.
Why?
Difficult to do well.
Why is it complicated and difficult?
He writes in iambic pentameter most of the time, and it's the wording is very specific, and it's not casual.
It's not casual at all. Sometimes when you read a Mamet script, it takes you 3 or 4 readings just to understand exactly what the characters say. And interestingly, when you read it, you'll read a sentence on the page, and you're not sure what it means, but the second you say it out loud, it's clear.
Yeah.
He has a tendency to cut some of the words out of a speech, as we do in natural speech.
Mm-hmm.
William H. Macy and Felicity Huffman will be back in the second half of the show. I'm Terry Gross, and this is Fresh Air.
Major funding for Fresh Air comes from Barnes & Noble, publisher of Selecting the Pope, Uncovering the Mysteries of Papal Elections by Greg Tobin, available in stores and online at bn.com. Additional support for Fresh Air comes from the listeners of WHYY in Philadelphia, where Fresh Air is produced, and from Dial Press, publisher of the debut collection, The Red Carpet, Bangalore Stories by Lavanya Shankaran, set in modern-day India. This is NPR, National Public Radio.
This is Fresh Air. I'm Terry Gross, back with Felicity Huffman and William H. Macy, 2 great actors who are also married. They collaborated on the new film Transamerica. Macy is the executive producer. Huffman stars as a transsexual who's preparing to undergo final gender reassignment surgery and is already passing as a woman. It opens later this year. Macy's movies include The Cooler, Fargo, Boogie Nights, and Homicide. Huffman is now one of the stars of Desperate Housewives. She plays Lynette, a woman who gave up her career to raise her 4 children. Lately, she thinks her husband has lost interest in her, and she's afraid it's because his former girlfriend has just started working in his office. In a recent episode, she tried to spice up the marriage by dressing in a French maid's costume, but fell asleep before he came home from work. Here's what happened the next morning. Her husband is played by Doug Savant.
Honey, you were wearing a French maid's costume. I mean, come on. What were you thinking?
I was thinking our marriage was in trouble, and one of us ought to do something to try and save it.
Whoa, since when is our marriage in trouble? Okay, so we haven't had sex for a few days. Big deal, it happens.
Oh, that's Annabelle. How ironic.
How is Annabelle relevant to this conversation?
Because she now comes to this house every morning to remind you of what I'm not.
What?
She's the fantasy, Tom. The hot woman that you work with every day with her manicured nails and her designer outfits. I am the reality. The wife who never wears makeup and whose clothes smell like a hamper.
Okay, this may be the stupidest thing you've ever said.
I used to be the fantasy. There was a time when I didn't need a maid's outfit because I knew I was enough for you, even wearing a smelly T-shirt. And clearly, that's no longer the case.
Okay, honey, I don't know what to say. Look, if there's a way for me to fix this, I will do it. You just tell me, and I will do it.
No, there's nothing to fix. We've changed. That's all I'm saying.
You know how you were talking about before that the way things work out, one of you works on a film or TV show while the other stays home and takes care of your two children, and you try I guess, to alternate with that. Felicity Huffman, when you were offered a part in Desperate Housewives, did that create a big discussion about the amount of time that it would take to do it and who would take care of the children? And Bill Macy, what effect would that have on your career?
Well, you know, you never know if those things are going to go. I've done so many pilots, and a lot of them have been wonderful, and they've died an untimely death. But, you know, the prerequisites that I needed before I'd go in and audition on something was that it had to be ensemble and that it had to shoot in L.A. And since I can't do sitcoms and have been fired off several, I decided not to go for sitcoms. So with that, I knew I would shoot in L.A. so I could be home, and it was part of an ensemble, so God willing, I wouldn't work every day. And thank you, Mark Cherry. That's what I got.
You were fired from sitcoms?
I knew you'd pick up on that.
Yeah, I was.
Oh, why?
I've also killed several of them.
Why were you fired?
I was bad. I'm not kidding you. I was bad. My best friend, I remember one I did, and we shot the pilot, and it was with an audience, and my best friend came. And a member of the Atlantic Theater Company, and she was so sweet. She brought me flowers. She was like, "Congratulations." And I said, "What'd you think?" And she goes, "Oh, you're pretty bad." And sure enough, I got fired.
But anyways, getting back to the series in general, did you think it was going to be a subject of the culture wars when you started? Do you think it would get to that level?
Well, again, I have to preface this by saying, you never think it's going to get out of the box. I mean, I've learned that over the years. You do a pilot and you go, I wonder what I'm going to do after the pilot, because you never think it's going to get picked up. And gosh, you never think it's going to have the ride that Desperate Housewives did. And in terms of it being, a cultural phenomenon from the standpoint of my character, I mean, the reason I was attracted to Lynette, because I swore I would never play a mother and I didn't want to play a wife, because I found them two-dimensional and I found them not to be true to my experience of either one of those jobs, I guess I would say. That Mark Cherry wrote a portrait of motherhood that spoke to me. I know it's not everybody's, but I felt that my experience of motherhood, which is that it's phenomenally difficult and crazy-making, and you lose yourself, and you can't remember what it was like, and you're really ugly, and most of the time you're fat. And it's not out there socially, and it's not out there in the media. The most you can get from mothers is like, yeah, I'm really tired. But my experience was I'd turn to mothers and I'd go, I'm losing my mind and I can't do this and I love this kid, but this is not the job for me. And they'd go, but don't you love being a mother? And I'd go, it's so much more difficult. That question doesn't even apply. So that's the long way of getting back to, did I think it would be a cultural phenomenon? No, but it spoke to me on that sociological level, because I've experienced that. It's the idealization of motherhood. It's that motherhood is one of the last icons, and there's one way to do it. And that makes me crazy, and I think Mark writes to that, and I appreciate it. So that's why I took it, and I'm glad that it's hit a nerve with mothers. Not all mothers. I certainly know, I'm not speaking for them all, but I just feel like that experience was silent.
My guests are actors Felicity Huffman and William H. Macy. We'll talk more after a break. This is Fresh